Nestled in the rolling hills of Pall Mall, Tennessee, lies the home of one of America's most unlikely heroes, Sergeant Alvin C. York. A humble farmer, a man of faith, and a decorated World War I soldier, York's story is one of courage, conviction, and quiet legacy. Today, we're walking the grounds of the Alvin York State Historic Site, where history isn't just preserved, it's lived. From the log structures of his homestead to the steel turning wheel of his gristmill, every corner of this place tells the story of a man who answered the call of duty and came home to make a difference. Let's take a closer look.
Start spot. But I'm Ranger Wells here at Sergeant Alvin C. York State Historic Park. Definitely appreciate you guys all being here today. And again, if you have questions, do ask. Don't stress or hesitate. You guys will not be the first nor the last to ask whatever questions you have. So feel free to ask. But as a brief question for you guys, how many of you guys are familiar with the Sergeant York movie with Gary Cooper? Most of this group, maybe not most of that group.
I teach history, so I show it every year.
Okay.
So,
well,
at least once.
I love that movie, albeit it's not my favorite Gary Cooper movie. I've always been a fan of Bo Jess, but that's another story. But when it comes to film, it is one of those that we always have to remember it is Hollywood. It's not 100% historically accurate, but I always like stressing the fact that it is very true to the essence of the story. And it's a film that is composed during its time. When I say that, there are certain motivations that comes out in the summer of 1941. For us familiar with that period of time, it's a period of contention and tension, I guess you could say, in the world. And so the movie has a goal, simply by doing their best to tell Alvin's story. Now, I will say we've looked over the original script, and we will argue here now that if they had stayed close to the original script, it would have been a lot better. But the director decided he wanted to make it his own a little bit. But with that said, there are components of the film that are very accurate to the story. There are components of the film that were things Alvin said that were metaphors that they would make literal in the film because they're trying to capture and convey a message. And so the movie's capturing 1912 to 1919 and condensing it in less than 2.5 hours. And it's really hard for any of us to talk about our lives and condense it into a brief period of time. So for they're dealing with what they have. But the reason why I have it standing out here right now, there is a scene very accurate to the story of the film. When Alvin's confronted by the senior officers of Major Buxton and Captain Danford, and they will debate with him for a number of days, and he comes back home on a 10-day leave, and he sits upon a mountain that's true to his story. He comes home, and he sits on Black House Mountain, which is a mountain to the right of the barn. And you'll see a section of exposed cliff face on the left-hand side of the mountain. That is the Yellow Doors. That is where Alvin was sent for approximately 36 hours to read his Bible and contemplates a question that would change the rest of his life. And it would be up there he decides he'd be willing to fight. And I always like pointing that out for folks. But we'll make ourselves our way into the house so I don't have to compete with traffic. It's a little louder than me. I don't like having to be loud unless I have to be loud. But we'll make our way into the house. Honestly, I will talk and reference the film quite often because for most folks who come here, that is their baseline knowledge. It comes from the movie. It's probably the most singular, popular thing that has propelled Alvin's story over the last 80 years. But for Alvin, it is just a facet. It's the second resurgence of his story, and they try to capture as well as they can. And when the movie came out, Alvin was one that was fairly adamant. You know, he has his own reasons and motivations for making the film, largely because he's trying to build his Bible school at the time, and so his reasoning is kind of his own. But he wants the movie to do certain aspects and capture certain things, and one of those is very specific to the house that we're standing in. So for those familiar with the film, it shows Alvin coming home, and very accurately, it shows him come home. He arrives aboard the USS Ohio in New York City, and he's greeted by thousands of people, including a young congressman from Tennessee by the name of Cordell Hall, who was actually born just about 25 minutes from us. But Cordell Hall is the one welcoming Alvin home and informing him he is the most famous American soldier from the war. And for Alvin, he's largely famous, not necessarily for what he did on the battlefield or the fact that he's a Medal of Honor recipient. He's famous because of a newspaper article that is syndicated in the Saturday Evening Post, so it's seen across the country, that makes Alvin famous. And it's written by George Petulio, called The Second Elder Gives Battle. And it comes out in April of 1919. So just a couple months before Alvin comes home, you have this newspaper article. And for this article, it's a story that resonates with people around the country. Prior to World War I, close to 85% of the country is still largely agrarian. We're still a largely farming society. And so here's this story about a farm boy, much like the rest of the country, who is an individual that is seen as a man of faith and conviction, like much of the country saw itself, but also more of a personification of the country. He was a man that was reluctant to fight. He had signed up for the draft as what we would perceive today as a conscience objector. He filed for exemption. He didn't want to fight. And so, much like the rest of us, we like to think we won't start the fight, but we'll end it. Alvin, in many ways, is a living embodiment of that. And so he resonates with people around the country. And for a lot of country folk and boys and farmers, he's one of them. And so for people around the country, they see themselves in Alvin. It's what makes him famous in many ways and regards. But when he came home in 1919, this house does not exist. In the movie, it shows him coming home to this house. He's being greeted and gifted this home. It's a little different. So in 1919, he arrives in New York City. He's being told he's famous, and he's put at another fork in the road. Much like Alvin going on top of the mountain to decide if he's whether or not he's willing to fight, he's given a question or a decision he has to make. He's informed because of his fame, he's being offered a great deal of endorsements. You know, much like today, people with noteworthy names or stories, they quickly get a lot of folks that will latch onto that fame because it helps them sell a product. You know, so-and-so is associated with my product, it helps sell it. So Alvin gets offered endorsements ranging from everything from cereal brand products to the rights to his story for a movie. There's some folks that trying to get him to do a vaudeville play. There's some other folks that had some crazier offers, but as a whole, you're looking around $500,000 that was being offered to Alvin York in 1919. In today's money, that's about $9.3 million. He's offered a fortune. To really put that in context, before Alvin left for the Army, he was doing better than most. When I said that, a good day for Alvin was working on the Dixie Short Route, which in many ways is the precursor to US 127 you guys are driving on today. Working on the Dixie Short Route, crew member could make $1.56 a day. That was good money in 1917. The Army actually incentivized people to enlist because they paid better than the average job, and they would pay $1 a day. So you would get $30 a month for being in the service. If you're a cook, you could get 36. So cooking skills are important. But it is an aspect that for Alvin, he could do well, but working on a road crew is not a permanent set of employment. When he looks at his draft form, he writes he's a farm laborer because he dabbles in a little bit of everything here in the valley. He works logging with Stearns Coal and Lumber. He helps build a short gauge railroad track for Stearns on top of Black House Mountain. He's worked on road crews. He's worked on farms. He apprentices a blacksmith under his father. He's doing everything he can to support his family. And his father had passed away in November of 1911. It is fallen on Alvin's shoulders to take care of his remaining siblings. And so for him, he's in that position. And he's offered this fortune. For a lot of us, we can see that like, this money can do a lot of good. For Alvin, it was a simple decision for him, which is not something we would normally see as a simple decision. You know, we see a great deal of wealth that could help benefit his life and the lives of his people, especially someone that in many ways still comes from a very impoverished lifestyle in an impoverished world. His family home looks more like the corn crib behind us in the house that we're standing in, because it was a single room bat and board home which had at one time 13 people living in it. And so for him, that's where he had come from. And it's the world that they resided in, far removed from the rest of the world. And here he is being offered this fortune that could make a difference, make a change. And so for Alvin, though, It was simple. And in the movie, they make a pointed question. Is it because of what I've done in the war? And in many ways, yes. All those endorsements because what he did in the war, but what he did in the war got him in that newspaper article. And that newspaper article made him famous. It's a chain of events. And for Alvin, that was never right. Later on in life, he would say, Uncle Sam's uniform ain't for sale. It was this idea that it's dishonorable to make a profit off for war exploits, especially when so many others don't come home. And for him, like a lot of his fellow veterans that came home, that had seen battle on the front lines in the trenches of World War I, they want to go home. They want to return to a sense of normalcy, something from when they had been before the war. And so for Alvin, he wants to come home, and it's simply the right thing to do. He doesn't want it. It all brings Alvin back home. He comes home, he marries his sweetheart, Miss Gracie, in June of 1919, and moves back into his family home across the river. But us here in Tennessee, we see Alvin a lot differently now. He's not just a war hero that we're proud of. For all intents and purposes, just because Alvin's a Medal of Honor recipient wasn't going to get him a house. He's one of 110,000 boys from Tennessee that we're proud of, that went over, did their duty, they served their country. 4,000 don't come home. He's one of 6 Medal of Honor recipients from the state of Tennessee. There's a total of 126 in World War I. 6 came from Tennessee. And so for us, we're proud of all of them. But we're the volunteer state after all. It's kind of expected. When Alvin turns away that fortune, we don't see a war hero that we're proud of. We see a man of honor, a man of conviction, a man of principles, which in many ways are defining attributes of our favorite sons here in Tennessee, like David Crockett and Sam Houston. Now, Texas claims them, but we have them first, and I like to always reiterate that. But for us, they were men that they did what was not considered popular, not considered the way most people would go. And so for Alvin, he turns away that fortune, he comes home, and we see him differently, and the Nashville Rotary Club begins a campaign in 1919 to acquire land, build a farm, and a home that Alvin could call his. And it takes a little bit of time. In the movie, he's coming in this house with Gracie in the summer of 1919. Won't walk into this house until February of 1923. And the house he walked into is the one you see pictured on the chimney. Now, mind you, these are the same houses. The one in the picture is the same one we're standing on. We're actually standing on the open side porch over here right now. But this is a home that's lived in. It's like any home. It changes for the needs of a family. And as technology changes, it changes with it. And so what you're seeing is a home that's lived in from 1923 till 1984. And when we go through the house, everything in the home is original to the home, but does span that breadth of time, except for one thing, and I'll point it out when we get to it. But it is an aspect of how the home changes over the life of the family. But that's my quick haphazard way to get to 1923. I'm a military historian, so it pains me not to talk about World War I and the war and go into depth. But if you do have questions about it, feel free to ask. But any questions? I think that was a resounding no. The carpenters that built this home were down in Jamestown, just down the road. And the 2 primary carpenters on the home's construction were both World War I veterans, just like Alvin. One of them, an Ovid Orestes Crowley, was actually with the 102nd Infantry Regiment, which you guys may or may not be familiar. You guys may have heard, though, of the story of Sergeant Stubby, a small dog that becomes a mascot for a regiment with the 26th Division and saves lives on the battlefields in World War I. That is the same regiment that Crowley is with, and he was one of the carpenters that builds his home. I always thought that was fascinating. Another famous story connected. But with that said, when they come into this home in 1923, there's a couple things I always like to point out. And the reality is, the home wasn't actually entirely finished yet. The second floor was incomplete. It's cold. It's drafty. So Alvin Gracie and Alvin Jr. will move into this room right here. This room was never intended as a bedroom. It's intended as a sunroom or a parlor. But for Alvin and Gracie, it's a completed section of the house. It has a fireplace. It's a controlled environment, especially with their young child. With that said, that will remain Alvin and Gracie's bedroom for the rest of their lives. They will never leave that room. As soon as the second floor is done, children as they get older will go upstairs. This is their room. They actually have 8 more children in this room. They have a total of 10. 8 were born here. Of those 10, 7 make it to adulthood. And of those 7, 1 is still with us today, which is Miss Betsy. She's 92. But it is very much the beginnings of the home and the family that's here. On top of that, one of the things I think is really neat about this house, when they moved into it in 1923, and when they were building it, Alvin had a little bit of input. So when they moved into it, there's a component in this house that made this home completely unique here in the valley. wasn't found anywhere else out here. And for a lot of folks out here, it's something they didn't even know existed. And I like to say it's something we take for granted every day and we use every day. You guys know what that is?
Indoor plumbing.
20 more years. Close.
Electricity.
Bingo. So there's a few steps to get to that indoor plumbing. But in 1923, this home will be powered by a Delco Light power plant, a kerosene generator outside that will power this home. And it stems from Alvin. In the movie's perspective, there's a scene where Cordell Hall's talking to him in the Waldorf Astoria, and Gary Cooper's playing Alvin's playing with a little light switch on the wall, hinting at his fascination. But for Alvin, he will write home letters, and he will talk about in those letters, it's November of 1918. The war is over. The armistice has been signed. And Alvin's company's put on leave, and they find themselves wandering down the streets of Paris, France, a city famously known as the City of Lights. Paris was 100% electrified by 1900, let alone by the time Alvin sees it in 1918. And he's walking down paved roads with electric street lamps, with automobile taxis that can take him anywhere in the city. There's airplanes flying overhead. Every home, shop, and business is electrified. It is a world vastly different than the Valley. And that's very important for Alvin's story. It's the same reason why, for Alvin, he signs this with a conscientious objector. Yes, his religious faith and convictions impresses upon it, but also the psyche of the Valley. They had gone through a lot of horrors during the Civil War in the Valley that is still very much remembered. For them, they knew what wars could be. And so for Alvin, it's this idea that for them, they had shut themselves off from the world. What he would say was that by 1917, the Valley hadn't all changed that much since 1865. Boys came home after the Civil War. Some brought families back with them. Some brought friends back with them. That was your last major outside influence in the Valley. Because the Valley, with the guerrilla raids, had decided we don't want to deal with any outsiders or foreigners. And an outsider and a foreigner here in the Valley could be literally from the south side of the county. If you weren't from the Valley, you're a potential threat. And so for them, they pocket themselves off in isolation. The movie actually does a really good job picturing the Valley almost in an 1860s and 70s style and society and culture, because by 1917, that's basically what it was here. And he would say that during the Civil War, folks want to be left alone. When the war's over, they got their wish. They're left alone, they're left behind, and they're forgotten. So by World War I, Alvin comes home and realizes how much they've been forgotten, how much they've been left behind, how much they're going to have to do to catch back up. So when this home is finished, as you guys walk around it, I want you to kind of think about this a little bit. When you walk around this house, as we're going through it, this home is not just a mansion here in the Valley that was a gift for what he had done and his character of who he was. In many ways, his home goes beyond being a modern marvel here in the Valley with its electricity. But in many ways, it's a beacon of light and hope. And Alvin will use it as such for the rest of his life. And this home will function more as a community center than a family home. And as Alvin Gracie would call it, for all their years here, this was Tennessee's home, and everyone was welcome. But before I get on a tangent, you guys got any questions? You guys are looking around a little bit. The same room that is the beginnings of the family in the home is also Alvin's waning days. So that interesting bed on the left there is actually a Serco electric bed. So Alvin suffers a severe stroke in 1954. He paralyzed the left side of his body. He is wheelchair bound and bedridden for the rest of his life.
I was thinking it was their version of a hospital bed.
Yes, ma'am. And it's actually a fascinating piece because he's not in this bed yet till 1960. So for 6 years, he's actually on this bed that's that picture right there on the mantle. He's in that hospital bed for 6 years. And in 1960, a gentleman much like himself had heard about his medical condition, his plight, that he's confined to a bed, and he knew there was a solution for Alvin. So he reached out to his American Legion folks. He was like Alvin, World War I bed. Reached out to his American Legion, petitioned them to purchase this brand new bed that was here. What's fascinating about this bed is today we would say that this bed design is the father of all modern day hospital and medical beds today. And so Alvin's receiving one of their early beds, and it's a Serco electric bed. Most folks, especially if anyone that's worked in the medical field, they will quickly pick up on the name. It's commonly referred to as a striker bed or striker frame. As a firm believer in strikers, every one of our ambulances here in the county run striker power lift gurneys. They are back savers. So the times I run with the ambulance service, it's made a difference. But Alvin's receiving one of the early beds in 1960 as a part of this effort by American Legion Post up in Michigan. And what makes it even more special is the gentleman that led the charge to get him this bed is Dr. Homer Stryker. So I always thought that was pretty phenomenal. He gets this bed, it includes... Yes, sir.
The gentleman was much older than Sergeant York, but I know it's not his father.
Hope you guys enjoyed it. I appreciate you guys being patient with me this whole time as I just keep rambling and talking. But if you guys have questions about anything, please feel free to ask us, talk to us. Visit Center, please feel free to explore fully if there's any. But we do programs throughout the year, and if you guys follow us on Facebook, if there's anything where you guys see that we're doing you're interested in, come out and join us. We have to have you. Our big programs are usually free and open to the public. Follow us on Facebook. We're doing a live stream of a Q&A table that we're doing. Unfortunately, I got roped into that, so I'll be on that table. But if you ever have a chance, come out and join us. We'd be happy to have you guys. But thank you.